A lot of people may not be aware of this, but they have been purchasing farmland and investing in farmland, buying farmland in the United States. And according to a recent U.S. Department of Agriculture report, Chinese state-owned companies, and basically every company of any size is state-owned by the CCP. The report says that these state-owned companies have purchased land, and it surged from about only 13,000 acres in 2010 to more than 350,000 acres in 2020. In dollar terms, the value of the land in the U.S. now owned by China has gone from $81 million in 2010 to $1.8 billion in 2020. That's an increase of 2,000%. More worrisome than just the amount of land is that some of the land is near U.S. military bases. As an example, the Fufeng Group, I understand, bought 300 acres of land in Grand Forks, North Dakota, and set up a milling plant there last spring. That plant is or that's what they say they've done in that plant. That plant is a 20-minute drive from an Air Force base where the U.S. military is scheduled to build systems that will form the background of all of our U.S. military communications around the world. But it might not just be our military secrets that the CCP is interested in. The government-owned Bank of China loaned $4 billion to a Chinese company called the WH Group to buy Smithfield Foods, a leading U.S. producer of pork. So now China controls a large portion of the U.S. food supply, at least the pork supply. Another example of their long-term planning for world domination is here a Chinese billionaire, and Chinese billionaires are always controlled by the CCP because at a whim, the CCP can take away anything they own. So these billionaires will do whatever the CCP says. And they lend him money, $110 million, to buy 15,000 acres of farmland in Texas. And this billionaire says he plans to build a wind turbine farm on 15,000 acres. And that would give, if he did that, that would give him, and therefore the CCP, direct access to the entire electricity grid in Texas, which is, of course, connected to the grid in across the United States.
Sir, you're talking about very good topic because the concern about the CCP purchasing lands in America is increasing now. And when you talk about the Fufeng Group, actually, I have sent you one report that's done by our team. Even back to February, we got a request from the intelligence community. They want us to help to investigate the Fufeng Group and their purpose for purchasing the land, the background knowledge. So what I can tell you is Fufeng Group and the big land they purchased is just a small part of the things CCP has done in the United States in this way. The purposes are multiple. So first, when you talk about the food supply, yes, China always wants to disrupt the food supply chain in the United States. And this was already well stated in one People's Liberation Army's textbook, a document, which is called Biosecurity, and which was reviewed by me the first time in the world last year. They talked about the biosecurity, which for them, it means their unrestricted bioweapon program, that besides using pathogens like virus, bacteria, and the food supply chain is another very useful field to conduct the biowarfare because they can use transgenetic technology to change the plants, and also they can introduce the different kind of the insects which would damage the local farms. And altogether, they want to use the biological technology to create the damage to Americans' food supply. And once there is lack of food supply, they basically feel they have destroyed America in a very good level.
So in other words, a doomsday scenario about this would be that they're buying farms around the country and they're going to experiment with either various insects or various diseases that are spread among crops to destroy all of the crops in America. That is a doomsday scenario, but it's not impossible. It is not impossible. It is within the realm of science to be able to do that.
And especially when you check Fufeng Group, you will surprisingly find that they connected closely to the military, CCP's military medical academy, and directly connected to certain bioweapon bioweapon expert like Yang Ruifu, who was already identified by my team in the Yan reports that Yang is one of the principal bioweapon experts involved into COVID-19's development in China.
And if you, I hate to say the beauty of this, but the horror of this is that unlike a hot war where you can know where the missile came from because we have tracking satellites around the world, you can't really know where a virus came from. You can suspect, but even in the early days of the COVID, nobody, you were saying it came from China, but most of the Democrats and most of the media said that was nonsense, right? It came from bats, but it wasn't really a weapon. And the same thing would be true about attacking our food supply. It would be very difficult to prove that these insects were developed intentionally to destroy America, or that the various diseases that plants get were sent by China. It would be difficult to prove and therefore difficult to respond against them. It's incredibly brilliant.
Yeah, in this way, that's why Xi Jinping always said we should have the bottom line thinking, which means you should break through the bottom line, which means you should use everything you can do and don't think about humanity, but just to achieve the goals of Xi Jinping and the CCP. So in this case, once they control the scientists like Dr. Fauci in the agriculture field, so they definitely can create the nature origin theory again, which will be very difficult to prove. The other purpose include that that some land is very close to the American military base. So CCP would set up their equipment there, set up their teams there to collect all these kind of signals, data from Americans' military base. And also they can do something to disrupt the practice in the American military if it's necessary. And also, for example, if American government need to enlarge the military base, for example, in the wartime, they may need to rent the land from CCP. And that means basically CCP can directly control the things happened in that land in American military. This kind of tactics are very hidden, very cunning, but very dangerous for American security.
Yes, and it's because we're a free country. In most countries, or in many countries, you're not allowed, foreigners are not allowed to own land. They're not allowed to own land. You have to be a citizen to own land. And there are countries where nobody can own land. The government owns it all, and you're just getting a lease on it. But in America, we let anybody virtually buy anything. And so this is going to be very, very difficult, even if the government knew, even if we all knew that China's buying land, and we do know these are Chinese companies, then there's nothing we can do about it.
I can see that there are some actions ongoing, but of course that's not enough yet. And also another purpose I can tell you now, including that CCP not only in Texas, North Dakota, also it happened in South Dakota, in Hawaii, in many other states. And CCP also, there were native people in different states, and the natives, they actually have more authority in that land, and they can control the land. They have their own community. They can vote to make their own laws. And CCP using their capitals to establish the very good connections with these natives in different states. And what will happen is, if you already heard that several months ago, CCP actually managed to turn Solomon Islands from pro-America to pro-CCP. They even stop American Navy to park in their harbors. And that will be a very good example to show you what will happen to these states if CCP can successfully turn the local people like the Solomon Islands local people. So basically, they will manage to infiltrate into the communities, and also they will manage to get the voting this kind of rights and change their laws. And then after that, CCP will also work with scientists like the archaeologists. They will establish the theory to tell you, from the ancient time, this land should be independent. And the American government is very cruel. White people kill the native people and kill the colorful people. So they will create such very hatred theory, and then they will create a division in local place to divide these people from America. And this will be very dangerous. And if you don't stop it in advance, it will be very difficult to handle it once it happens.
Extremely dedicated and extremely nefarious, and it's working on many different levels. That's the most frightening part. It's not just developing advanced weapons, which you could track.